Okay. So everyone is changing their clocks, right?
Yeah.
And some people which are so careful to change their clocks the moment the clock is changed. Some people like me, change the clock. They're gonna change it back soon. Mark my words, I've seen this movie before. They change and they change it back. So why not just wait till they change it back? But there are people which are very into time. And there's either seems to be a virtue because they're always, on time. On the other hand, it could be a deficiency. They're always such sticklers and so limited. It has to be this, it can't be another way. So today we're going to learn something about this week's Torah portion, which gives us insight into this subject. What's this week's Torah portion about? Close. Pikudei. Excellent. Pikudei. So Pikudei is the last Torah portion of this book. There's a first Torah portion and there's a last Torah portion. And there's a concept in Torah, it says in the book of formation, that the beginning and the end of something are connected. So that's why you find in throughout history, in Torah scholarship, great sages finding a connection between the beginning of a book of Talmud and the end of a book of Talmud. Because there is a connection. Because the end and the beginning are created in a way that they have this connection. Just like in our lives. When you plan something, when is your plan fulfilled? At the very end. When you think about building a home, when is your plan fulfilled for the home? When the home is finished, that's when the plan is reached, it's been fully realized. So in the beginning of the book of Shemos and the end of the book of Shemos, we find a connection. The beginning of Parshat Shemos talks about the counting of the Jewish people. As the Talmud explains, because Hashem loves us, He counts us all the time. He counted us 9 times in history. The 10th time when Mashiach comes. So He counts us. Why does He count us? Because He loves us. Okay. It talks about counting the Jewish people. The end of the book of Shemos also talks about counting. In this week's Torah portion, Hashem counts the amount that everyone gave for the tabernacle, and then proceeds to describe what everything was used for. So first Hashem counts all the donations. So just like the beginning is about counting, the end is about counting. And yet, the title of the Torah, of the whole book, as Nachmanides says, what's this book about? And that's what in the vernacular, people use that word to describe this book. What is the book of Shemos called? The book of Exodus. Exodus, the book of redemption, the book of freedom. So freedom seems to be the opposite of counting. When you count something, you highlight how limited it is, how defined it is, how it has a beginning and has an end, versus the idea of redemption and freedom and infinity. It seems to be a whole different kind of energy, right? One is about limitation, one's about infinity, one's about freedom. So why is it at the beginning and the end of the Torah portion, end of the book, are about counting, when the theme is supposed to be about freedom, about redemption? Doesn't seem to fit. So the answer is this. Let's take a little closer look at the beginning and the end of the book of Shemos. In the beginning of the book of Shemos, indeed, it talks about a number of Jews that arrive in Egypt. How many Jews arrived in Egypt? 70. How many Jews leave Egypt? You know? More. 600,000 men, plus women, plus children, 3 million people. Yeah, it's a lot, right? They're coming from the 70 people, and all of a sudden there's 3 million people. So that shows you that although we're talking about something finite, and in this finite number of Jews, there's an infinite power. As the Torah says, the more the Jewish people are pained, the more they multiply, the more they're successful, the more they grow. And this is what's happening today as well. They can't bring us down. The more Chas V'Shalom that they try, the more the Jewish people are successful, the more they grow, and the more they explode in the population. So the end of the book of Shmos also has this paradox. It talks about the number of everything that was given, how much silver, how much gold, how much copper. Yeah, what's the last verse about? The last verse of the whole Torah portion. The glory of Hashem is in the tabernacle. And the glory of Hashem is obviously not something which is limited, it's infinite. It's the glory of Hashem. So it's a limited space with certain items. And yet, what's in this limited space? What's here? What do we have? You have something which has no limitations whatsoever. So much so that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rambam says Moses was Mivchar Minan Enushi. He was a chosen of all mankind. And even he couldn't enter the tabernacle because of the incredible holiness that was in there. So on the one hand, it's limitation. On the other hand, it's infinity. So that's why the beginning and the end of the Torah portion have relationship to redemption, because there's something infinite in them as well, not just limitation. But the question is, why do we need the limitation? If redemption is about infinity, about going beyond limitation, so why do we need to have the 70 souls that produce 3 million? Why do we need to have this limited space that produces the glory of Hashem? Why not just have the glory of Hashem? Why not just talk about the three? Why the emphasis on the limitation? There's another verse, we read in the Haftorah which week. The number of the Jewish people is like the sand of the sea that cannot be counted, that cannot be counted because there's so many. So on the one hand, it's saying there's a number of the Jewish people. On the other hand, it's saying they're beyond, you can't count their number. Well, what's the point of a number that can't be counted? Why do we have to even have this number? Why do we have to have the limitation? Why do we have to be told there's 70 souls? If the point is to say that we're beyond limitations, then why do we have to highlight the number 70? Why do we have to highlight the exact number of things that were donated in the tabernacle if it's about the glory of Hashem filling the tabernacle? So the answer is this. There are really three different kinds of things. There are things which have limitation. Clearly, limitation is not about redemption. Limitation is about infinity, about something which is finite. Limitation is about something which has a beginning and an end. Then you have something which is beyond limitation, which is infinite, which seems to be connected to redemption. But if something has to be infinite and it cannot fit in a finite space, that's not truly infinite. The real meaning of infinity is that there's able to be a convergence of the finite and the infinite. They're able to come together. That shows true infinity. That expresses how Hashem is kol yachol. Hashem can do anything. When you just see limitation, you don't see Hashem's power. And even when you see infinity, you don't see the true power of Hashem. When do you see an expression of something that only Hashem could do in the convergence of the finite and the infinite? And that's why what's the very first item the Torah tells us that they had to put in the tabernacle? The very first thing, the ark. Oh. Why the ark? So the Nachmanides says the ark was the main component of the temple, that was what brought the divine presence to rest in the temple, the ark that housed the tablets. That's what it's all about. So what was the ark? The ark, the Torah says, it has a measurement. It was 2.5 amos long, 1.5 amos wide, and a very specific measurement. And yet, where was the ark? The ark was in the tabernacle and in the Holy of Holies. And the Holy of Holies had a measurement too. The Holy of Holies had, it was 10 amos long, 10 amos wide. The amma is about 1.5 feet or 2 feet, so it's 20 feet long, 20 feet wide, let's say. And if you place this box, this ark in the center of the room, so you're going to have less than 10, it would seem, on each side. And yet the miracle was, there was 10 amos on each side. So we have over here, it took up space and didn't take up space at the same time. It had space and beyond space at the same time. So why did it have space and beyond space at the same time? Because in the Mishkan, it wasn't just an expression of something which was infinite, which is beyond limitation. In the tabernacle, there was a presence of Hashem who was not only beyond being infinite, he's beyond being finite as well. beyond being finite and beyond being infinite. And that's why the Torah mentions the number, how big it was. Who cares how big it was? We want to say Hashem's presence filled the tabernacle. Why you have to know the number? It was 2.5 amos long, 2.5 amos wide. Why do you need to know the number of its dimensions? And the answer is because true infinity is when there's a connection between the finite and the infinite. You can't have infinity without the finite. True infinity is about the finite. And this is also why in the book of Shemos, in this book, we read about the giving of the Torah. Giving the Torah, what do we have? We have 613 commandments. Each commandment has a limitation. Has to be this, can't be that. It's very specific, right? Every mitzvah is very specific. On the other hand, a mitzvah, it seems to be a dry physical thing. But what's in a mitzvah? The mitzvah is the light of Hashem. So what is the mitzvah? Is the mitzvah the light of Hashem, which is infinite? Is the mitzvah the physical object that you're putting on the tefillin, the leather? The answer is a mitzvah is really beyond both of them. The mitzvah is Hashem is beyond all limitation, and therefore Hashem takes his infinite light and he puts his infinite light into a physical object. So when you're doing a mitzvah, you're drawing an infinite light of Hashem and you bring it into the physical world. And mitzvah expresses this power of Hashem, which is beyond the finite and beyond infinite. So getting back now to the connection between the beginning of the book and the end of the book, the beginning of the book of Shemos talks about 70 people arriving. But what's in those 70 people? Infinite power. They produce 3 million people. The end of the book of Shemos talks about the number of the number of the donations and what was given. What's in that number? Something infinite. The glory of Hashem is in that place. They're both not just about the finite or about the infinite, they're about the convergence of them both. And that's why it's called the book of redemption. The coming of Mashiach. The redemption, though. What do we call the redemption? What's Mashiach called? The time period, the coming of Mashiach.
Mm-hmm.
The Geula?
Yes, it's called the Geula. What kind of Geula? It's called the true and complete Geula. That means Mashiach comes, every single thing in the world is going to be redeemed. We're going to see the truth of every rock, of every tree, of every single thing in the world. We'll see it's a godly pour. Now we take a cup of tea, we see a bracha. We're announcing to the world, that everything is created by his words, by the word of Hashem. Mashiach comes, we'll see the word of Hashem in everything. So it's going to be true. We see the truth of everything. And it's going to be complete. It's going to be in every single thing in the world. We're going to see in the whole world, everything, it's truth. And how does that happen? It's through the mitzvahs that we do. The mitzvahs also are about the connection of the infinite and the finite. Through a mitzvah, you bring down the infinite light of Hashem into the physical world, and the mitzvah has a ripple effect. Not just that space and that time to the mitzvah. It affects the world around. And through all the mitzvahs that were done in history, the world's now in a state where it's ready for the coming of Mashiach, as Rebbe said so many times. And therefore, this is the time we're in. Is an exciting time, the time of redemption. And one next word, one next thought, one next action, whether it's we were discussing last week, whether it's a mumbled mitzvah or it's a mitzvah done with a lot of concentration, and it seems like, this mumbled mitzvah is a limited, tiny little thing. And yet in this tiny little thing, this thing seems to have no content. There's something infinite and godly, and that's why every mitzvah brings us to the time of the coming Mashiach, make something happen. Any questions, comments? All right, great. Good Chodesh, Reb Zev, Reb Baruch, Reb Berel.